Hello friends, I'm Miss Deanna and I'm here at the Newburgh-Chandler Public Library at Bell Road. And this is my friend Olivia. Olivia lives with her father, her mother, her brother Ian, her dog Perry, and her cat Edwin. Now, Olivia is good at a lot of things. She's good at getting dressed up. She's good at building sandcastles. She's good at singing very loud and dancing. But she's best at wearing people out because Olivia always has lots of questions and Olivia is always very busy. Sometimes Olivia even wears herself out. On rainy days, Olivia likes to visit the museum, and she runs to go see her favorite painting, and she stares at it and looks at it for a very long time. Olivia, what are you thinking? Is she thinking of being a ballerina? There's one painting that Olivia doesn't understand. It's a painting by Jackson Pollock. Olivia looks at that painting for a long time too. I don't get it. I could do that in 5 minutes. So when she gets home, she tries it. On her bedroom wall, her mother is not happy. Now I have another friend at the library. Her name is Fancy Nancy. Fancy Nancy likes art too. Fancy Nancy likes big words. When she goes to her dance class, on the wall at her dance class, they have the same painting that Olivia was looking at in the art museum. It's a painting of ballerinas by an artist named Edgar Degas. But when she went to the museum with her father and her friend Lionel liked this painting. Nancy thought he was just teasing, but he wasn't. And her father and Lionel and Fancy Nancy sat and looked at that painting by Jackson Pollock for a long time. The more Nancy looked at it, the more interesting it became. Parts of it looked lacy. Parts of it looked like a spider web. And sometimes she would find hidden colors in the painting. Well, if 2 of my library friends enjoyed looking at this painting or found this painting, maybe we should take another look at it and the artist who did it. The artist who painted this is called Jackson Pollock. And Jackson Pollock had a nickname, Action Jackson, because Jackson Pollock did not paint like other artists did with a palette and brushes like this and on an easel, which you know is that thing that holds up the painting so that they can draw and paint like this. Instead, Action Jackson would spread out his canvas on the floor. He would get cans of paint that looked like the same or were the same kind of paint that you would use to paint your house. He would stir it up with a stick and he would dribble all over. Or he would put a big paintbrush in there and he'd splash it or throw it all over the canvas. He liked to walk around the canvas from side to side to side to side. So when you look at his painting, you can see it's even all the way around. He covered everything. Sometimes he would get down on the ground right next to his painting, and he would put his hands in the painting. If you look close, sometimes you can see his handprint in the painting. Now, the fancy kind of name that they had for his artwork, and I know that Fancy Nancy likes big words, is called abstract expressionism. But in Mr. Jackson Pollock's words, he said, "On the floor, I'm more at ease. I feel nearer. I feel more a part of the painting, since this way I can walk around it, working from the four sides, and literally be in the painting." Wouldn't it be fun if we could all get inside a painting? What painting would you choose to get inside of? Can you imagine it? So, I think it's interesting that our friend Olivia, who really didn't care for this painting, but is a very busy and very action person, is probably a little bit more like Action Jackson than she realizes. Now, in the description to this video, I have linked to a website where you can go and make your own Jackson Pollock painting. But it doesn't use any paint, so it's not messy. You can, if you want, like my friend Fancy Nancy, go out in your backyard and with your parents' permission, put a canvas on the ground and dribble paint all over it. But if you don't want to do that, there's some other things that you can do. The other thing in the description is a link to a recipe to make Jackson Pollock cookies. That one looked like a lot of fun. But what I found at the library this week is a book by Margaret Peot called Inkblot. And it's a way to do some abstract painting that I think it's a little bit messy, but not quite as messy. And you can try this at home. So I'm going to be using craft paint. But I want you to remember that if you don't have paint like this at home, you can make a pretty good substitute with either lotion and food coloring or hair gel, hair conditioner with food coloring. So with your parents' permission, you can experiment with that at home and see what works best for you. An ink blot is something that you make by smushing the two sides of the paper together. So the first thing that we're going to do is take our piece of paper and fold it in half. Now you'll notice, friends, that I'm working on a nice table that I did not cover. So I'm going to be very careful to not be too messy here. But when you're doing this at home, I would recommend that you cover whatever your surface is with newspaper or some kind of paper to protect the surface. Now if I take a little bit of blue and I'm going to put just a little squiggle. I don't put it in the fold because if I put it in the fold, it gets too blotchy. But I have a squiggle like that, and this is the fun part. And I take the part without paint and I smush it right across the top. And it prints the paint on both sides. I'm going to set that aside. Another thing you can do, again, I'm going to fold it in half. Is you can try using 2 or more colors of paint. Now I like the colors yellow and green together. So let's try a little yellow and green. Now because I'm using 2 different colors, I'm not going to put as much of each color on there. I want it to make an impression, but I don't want it to be too smushy, because then it ends up just being one big blob. There's no pattern. So here's my paint, and I smush it together. And then pull it apart, and that's my design. Now I'm going to put that one aside to dry. The last thing you can try is, instead of folding your paper just once, you can fold your paper 4 times. So now I have 4 sections to my paper. I'm just going to put a little bit of paint in one of those 4 sections. And I'm going to fold it first the way I folded the other ones. Across and smush. And then I'm going to pull it open before the paint dries, and I'm going to fold it the other way and smush it. Now I have 4 pictures, and I can play around with the amount of paint so that I get lots down here too. And you could do it with more than one color. Now these are some that I made beforehand. This is one that is 4 of them together, and you can see I didn't have as much paint down here. But it's fun to look at ink blots and think, now what is that? What shape did that become? Does it look like anything to you? Can I take a pencil or a pen and turn it into a dragon or a monster or a butterfly? Or this one looks to me like 2 chipmunks kissing. There's lots of things that you can do. And in the book by Margaret, Peot, Inkblot, she shows lots of different things where people have taken their ink blots and drawn on them to make lots of fabulous pictures. So, play around with ink blots and see what you can come up with. Until we meet again, I'm going to say, we wave goodbye like this, we wave goodbye like this, we dunk some paint and splash it around. We wave goodbye like this. Bye for now.